Mount Kilimanjaro, Africa's highest peak and the world's tallest freestanding mountain, has long been a source of fascination for explorers, geologists, and historians alike. Its diverse ecosystems, unique geological features, and storied history have made it a prominent subject of scientific research and exploration. In recent years, a team of archaeologists and historians uncovered a remarkable biblical secret buried within the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro, shedding new light on the region's history and its connections to ancient civilizations. In 2000, a team of archaeologists, led by renowned historians and experts in biblical archaeology, embarked on an expedition to Mount Kilimanjaro to study its geological features and potential historical sites. According to a thorough examination of 6 cores that were extracted from the quickly decreasing ice fields at the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, it has been determined that these tropical glaciers began forming approximately 11,700 years ago. The tropical regions were affected by 3 major droughts thousands of years ago. Lonnie Thompson, a geology professor from Ohio State University, who led an expedition in the year 2000 to retrieve these cores, described Kilimanjaro's ice fields as stagnant and said that they are currently in a state of decline. Although the biblical story of Joseph is one that is well documented, not only in the Christian Bible, but also in the Torah and Quran, it has generally been treated as a highly dramatized story very loosely based on possible historical events that are intended to teach a lesson, rather than act as a definitive record of what occurred. The story begins with Joseph, the 11th of 12 sons, who was highly favored by his father Jacob, much to the irritation of the 11 other brothers. He was gifted a token of this favoritism in the form of a lavishly colored coat that sparked the jealousy of his other brothers. The Bible says that the coat was colored with red and purple dyes, which were the most prestigious and valuable colors in the ancient world due to their extreme cost and difficulty in procurement. Faced with such a blatant display of partiality and frightened of the meaning behind strange dreams that he kept having, Joseph's brothers sold him to an Egyptian merchant and returned the coat to Jacob, smeared with goat's blood and claiming that Joseph had passed away. Once in Egypt, Joseph was imprisoned, but his continuing prophetic dreams and skills in interpretation allowed him to gain the attention of the Pharaoh, who was troubled with disturbing dreams. Joseph said that the Pharaoh's dreams indicated that there were to be 7 years of plenty in Egypt, followed by 7 years of famine, and he was given the task of advising the Pharaoh in preparations for the years of famine. During this time, Joseph rose through the ranks of the Egyptian court and quickly became one of the most prominent members of the government, as he oversaw grain storage and preparations to see Egypt through the impending 7 years of famine. There has never been a record of any high-ranking Egyptian during this period who was called Joseph, and because it was highly unlikely that a foreign servant turned prisoner could reach the ranks of top advisor to the Pharaoh, it was always thought that this story was more of a richly embellished parable than a factual tale recounting actual events. However, a recent discovery in Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania has lent some credence to Joseph's story. Mount Kilimanjaro is the source of the Nile River's water, and the Nile River was, and still is, the lifeblood of Egypt. Without it full and flowing, crops and livestock would weaken and would stop growing, and famine would spread across the land, just as Joseph predicted in his interpretations of the Pharaoh's dreams. And studies of Kilimanjaro ice cores have found that there was a massive drought that took place about 3,600 years ago, around the same time that Joseph would have been advising the king. Additionally, a canal that was built to keep the Nile River branches open and flowing and allow the tributaries around it to remain fertile did such an excellent job that it is still in use today and functions successfully. Nobody knows who built the canal, but its Arabic name has been passed down from ancient times by the people who live nearby and translates to the waterway of Joseph, leading many to believe that it was built by Joseph in an effort to reduce the impact of the famine. While we may never know which parts of the story are true and which are myths, it certainly seems that these historical discoveries lend credence to the biblical events. The discovery also has significant implications for the study of biblical archaeology, as it provides tangible evidence of the widespread influence of the ancient Israelite civilization and its interactions with other cultures. It underscores the importance of continued research and exploration in order to uncover new insights into the history of the Israelites and their connections to other ancient civilizations. The unearthing of a biblical secret on Mount Kilimanjaro represents a remarkable achievement in the field of archaeology and serves as a testament to the power of interdisciplinary research and exploration. The discovery on the slopes of Africa's highest peak challenges our understanding of the region's history and the connections between ancient civilizations. As scientists continue to delve into the secrets of the past, new discoveries, such as this one, have the potential to reshape our understanding of human history.
Leonard Woolley and the Flood, Mesopotamian archaeological evidence. The Mesopotamian flood has been speculated on for centuries and has been investigated time and time again. The majority of historians assert that the Great Flood occurred during the rise of humanity and was the source of the fabled biblical tale of Noah's Ark. During excavations in 1928 to 1929, archaeologists at the historical sites of and Kish unearthed flood deposits which they connected with the flood as according to ancient Hebrew scriptures. Sir Charles Leonard Woolley, a famous British archaeologist, arrived at the scene to investigate further, and it did not take him long to reach his conclusion. It was, in his eyes, proof of the flood. In an excerpt from his 1954 book, he states, "By the time I had written up my notes, I was quite convinced of what it all meant, but I wanted to see whether others would come to the same conclusion. So I brought up 2 of my staff and, after pointing out the facts, asked for their explanation. They did not know what to say. My wife came along and looked and was asked the same question, and she turned away, remarking casually, 'Well, of course, it's the flood.' The first test pit used by Woolley was tiny, so the following archaeological season he dug up several more test pits, one of which being ridiculously large, 75 by 60 feet and 65 feet deep. In this pit, he found a deposit of clean, water-laid soil up to 11 feet thick. Notably, this evidence of the flood was lacking in several other pits in the area, but Woolley wholeheartedly believed that he had found proof of the biblical flood. After only a few years, another discovery was made at a third Mesopotamian site, Shuruppak, where they found a flood stratum. According to myth, Ziusudra, the Sumerian Noah, lived in Shuruppak. This flood residue separated the skeletal remains from the late Proto-Literate and early dynastic period, dating around 2950 and 2850 BCE, though no other Mesopotamian sites have any such evidence. Despite an attempt made by the creationists to decide an exact timeline for biblical events, the Bible lacks any specific dates for the flood that occurred in Genesis, or any other mentioned happening. Stories of the Mesopotamian flood are useful since one is able to draw similarities and contrast differences between the flood of Noah's Ark in Hebrew scriptures and the myth of the Mesopotamian floods, and debate whether they were one and the same. Many scholars through the ages have believed wholeheartedly that the similarities between the two provide irrefutable proof of the biblical flood's existence. As such, the widely accepted view is that the original accounts that appear in Genesis arose in Mesopotamia, and this is further proven by the fact that Mesopotamian accounts of such great terrible flood outdate the accounts made in the Bible. Furthermore, the Sumerian king list references a great flood. The king list is a very complicated document which has multiple editions. It's thought that it was created at some point in 2100 BCE. The king list is a report of every monarch and all the dynasties of ancient Mesopotamia, from the origin of kingship, which descended from heaven, up until the time it was made. However, the list is flawed. The length of each king's reign is impossibly long, and several early dynasties have glaring discrepancies. Even with these mistakes in mind, the Sumerian king list is a valuable document which has preserved names and bloodlines of real ancient rulers. According to the king list, the flood destroyed everything, cutting through the dynasties until kingship once again descended from heaven and the list of rulers continued. The majority of modern creationists often choose to ignore the Sumerian king list completely, stating that the Mesopotamian flood does not fall into agreement with the liberalist view of the Genesis flood. Primarily the fact that, if the Bible is to be taken seriously, Noah and his family were the flood's only survivors. The king list opposes this view. The problem is that if you ignore the evidence provided by the Sumerian king list, then the findings at Ur and Kish must too be ignored, as they only support claims of a local flood which would have certainly left survivors. The flood, though intense, was not nearly as large-scale as the Bible claimed its Genesis flood to have been, and though severely destructive, would not have destroyed every human in its vicinity. The question of whether what Leonard Woolley found was the remnants of the biblical flood or simply an unrelated natural disaster has yet to be answered because there is a lack of modern investigation. The flooding of southern Mesopotamia was presumably disastrous enough for stories of a great flood to spread through the country and ancient world. But because the records we have are so old and were passed down by word of mouth for centuries before being written down, many details have surely been exaggerated or simply lost to time. A relic of the precious blood. In 1247, King Henry III claimed to have his hands on an incredibly precious artifact, a vial containing Jesus' blood. He instructed his nobles to gather for a meeting at Westminster Abbey, London, for the purpose of sharing something with them. This was of the utmost importance, but at the time did not say exactly what he would be disclosing prior to the event. Rather, he only referred to it in vague terms as a holy benefit. As the nobles eagerly and curiously gathered, King Henry finally disclosed the reasoning behind such a gathering. He relayed that he was in possession of what he claimed to be drops of Jesus' blood, which was securely enclosed within a vial. His claims were backed up by various means that would have indicated immense credibility at the time, such as seals from bishops, Knights Templars, and the Patriarch of Jerusalem. The king ceremoniously carried the vial within his own hands, taking it to the abbey where he entrusted it in the hands of monks. The bishop claimed that whoever praised the relic would be blessed with 6 years plus 160 days of indulgences. For avid Christian followers, this was most certainly a holy benefit. Surprisingly though, the reveal of the relic did not gather as much attention as one would expect. This was probably due to the fact that its authenticity and credibility was questioned. Another similar relic was claimed to have been found in a different abbey located in Gloucestershire. This artifact was met with a lot more excitement. As it turns out though, whoever doubted the authenticity of the relic was not wrong to do so. In fact, King Henry VIII put the vial to the test. The examiners concluded that it was not Jesus' blood, but rather a combination mixture of honey, saffron, and maybe goose blood. Some argue that it may have been presented as a political move on King Henry III's part to gain the trust of his people. Today, other exhibits with the same claims exist, with the most famous one being the Basilica of the Holy Blood located in Belgium. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.